Hey everybody, it's Bobby Klink from Your Online Genius here. Today we're going to be talking about patents. We're going to be discussing how patents are relevant to online entrepreneurs, what they are, how you get them, all of those things. But before I start talking about patents, I wanted to step back for a second and talk about why you as an online entrepreneur, even if you're going to outsource your intellectual property work, why you need to understand the basics. And so in my post last week, I kind of mentioned I'm going to be doing theme weeks. Today and this week is part of a broad theme of what is intellectual property, what are the kinds, what you need to know about them. And the reason why I want to cover that for the first theme week and for the initial videos is, quite honestly, I want to make sure that everyone can understand the basics, right? That's the point. Let's get you the basics. And so why do you need to know the basics? Well, it's kind of like in my business. Even if I'm going to hire someone to handle my handle all my marketing efforts, I still need to actually know a little bit about marketing. I need to know so that I can actually talk to them, but also so I can spot issues and have a sense of when I should be talking about things, when I shouldn't be talking about things, but also so I can raise things with the person who handles it. The same thing here with intellectual property. If you don't know anything about intellectual property, you could be making mistakes everywhere and not know about it. And there really isn't a good way for you to get kind of the basics here if you don't have some sense of what's going on in the very basic level. So that's why I wanted to do this theme week. For people who are coming to this later, not live, look, the value is still there. You can get the basics. I'm going to cover some high points, not a bunch, but some high points, get you some basic info so that you can understand the concepts that are going on here. And that's, again, what I'm aiming for. I'm not aiming for to make you, aiming to make you an expert. I don't think you want to be an expert or need to be an expert. The idea is simply, let's get you to the point that you have a basic working knowledge of the different kinds of intellectual property, and so that you can then spot an issue and say, hey, that's maybe an issue. Let me think about that. Let me do some research. Let me, talk to somebody. Let me go and raise this on Your Online Genius. Let me get some ideas from some people. So that's the idea, and that's why I'm trying to get you this basic working knowledge. Okay, so today's live video is all about patents. And patents are one of the 5 forms of intellectual property that we're going to be talking about. They're one that most people have heard of. They probably get the most attention, maybe not in the online entrepreneurship world, but in a lot of areas, they definitely get the most attention with intellectual property. A lot of people seem to think that patents are really the only thing they need to be thinking about. But there's more, but I definitely want to talk about it because it's something that gets a lot of attention here. So let's talk about, what is a patent? Well, a patent is, to use some confusing legal terms, it's what's called a monopoly right granted by the government. But let's put it in simple terms. It's a right given to you by the government to be the exclusive person who's using, making, selling, or doing any number of other things with an invention. So patents are all about inventions. And what is an invention? A lot of people are probably thinking an invention is all about, say, a thing. It has to be a thing. It has to be a physical product. Well, that's one kind of invention, but it doesn't have to be. A patent can also cover a method. It can cover a formula. It can cover a way of doing things. All of those can be covered if they're new, they're novel, and they're innovative. That's the standard. It's got to be new, novel, innovative, basically. And that basically means someone else wasn't already doing it out there. And it's not just an obvious addition to what's already known. Those are kind of your big tests. There are some other limits. For example, it has to be something that's not abstract or an abstract idea. That's, the idea is you can't patent a mathematical formula because you discover it. That is something that's just abstract and out there and anyone can use it. So that's what's protected. How do you get a patent? That's the big question a lot of people want to know. And the way you get a patent is by going through the United States Patent and Trademark Office, or the USPTO in the US. Then there are foreign equivalents. And it's all the protection is limited to where you file. So if you file before the USPTO, you're going to get protection only in the United States, but you can file similar applications in other areas as well. The process of getting it, you're going to go through a back and forth with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, particularly with a member of, or someone who's called a patent examiner. Their job is to look at these applications and say yes or no, and to decide whether your application deserves you getting a patent. So that's what their job is. And you go back and forth. You will rarely get straight through. Not every case, in 75 or more % of the time, you're going to get what's called a rejection initially. They're going to say, no, you can't have a patent, and they're going to give you some reasons. And you're then going to have to respond to that and prove that you are, in fact, entitled to a patent under the standards that they apply. So there's this back and forth process. The process takes a long time. Look, you're dealing with government bureaucrats who have a lot of stuff on their plate. The typical time these days is going to be more than 2 years. It could be 3 years. It will depend on the technology, the complexity of what you're applying for, and how good your initial application is versus what they find and what's already out there. So the fewer times that the patent examiner says no, the better, right? Because every time they say no, it then usually takes you or your lawyers 3 months or so to respond, and then it'll take them 3 or 6 months to respond. So you can see it can just drag on for a long, long time. So that's one of the biggest problems. But let's talk about what are the biggest advantages of a patent versus other forms of intellectual property. Because often what you have to decide is, hey, should I try to protect this as a trade secret or as a patent? And we're going to talk about trade secrets later this week, and so you'll get a sense of the overlap. But each one can protect kind of a new or novel idea. The advantage of a patent is that your protection is absolute. And what I mean by that is if you have a patent for a product and you start selling it on the market, someone can't then go buy the product, take it apart, figure out how you made it, and make it a copy. They can't do that. Under trade secrets, they could. So the patent will give you a lot more protection. It's absolute during its term, which right now is 20 years from the time that you apply. So you'll apply, and let's say you get the patent 3 years later, then you'll have 17 years where you have complete protection for your product idea, whatever your invention is. But there are a lot of drawbacks, okay? First is it's a complicated procedure to get it. Like I talked about, it's going to take you 3 years, maybe more to get it. There are other issues with that that come with the complexity, which is, look, it's expensive. You're going to have to hire an attorney, and that's one where, again, when we get to the end, I'm going to tell you, the big upshot, don't try to go cheap here. It's going to cost you money to pay an attorney who knows what they're doing, who knows the process, to go through the process, and you're looking at $10,000 or more you're going to spend on a product or on a patent. Now, the other disadvantage is that your protection with a patent is limited. Okay, now you are not going to get protection forever. You're going to get protection for a period of, like I said, 20 years from when you apply. And once that's gone, anyone can use it. And let's again contrast that with a trade secret, which we're going to talk about more later this week. A trade secret, you get protection forever. The Coca-Cola formula, for example, has been protected for over a century now, and it has protection that will last forever. And the reason why is because it is a trade secret. They've kept it secret and kept it that way. If you go the patent route, you're going to lose protection after a period. So that's one of the big drawbacks as well. Now, how does this apply to online entrepreneurs? For the most part, it doesn't. Let's be honest. For the most part, online entrepreneurs are not out creating products, and they're not out necessarily creating a new process of doing something. So for most online entrepreneurs, you're not going to have to worry about filing for a patent. You're not going to have to make the hard decision. But if you come up with an innovative way of doing something, an innovative business method, you might have to decide. I can't, tell you what would be innovative in your industry or in your specific niche, because that's very specific. But let's say you're an SEO expert and you actually come up with a new method of doing something that's completely different that works. Well, you might want to think about whether you could file a patent. In most cases, I would advise you against it, but some people would advise you that you should at least think about it. Now, the one last upshot I want to give you, though, is if you decide to go the route of a patent, don't go cheap. I'm a big proponent of do it yourself in a lot of areas. With a patent, you should not. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But there are people, and I don't do this work, but there are people whose sole practice involves filing these applications and going back and forth with the patent examiners. So they're experts in how to do that. They know all the tricks of the trade. They know how to get your application through as quickly as possible. They know how to avoid landmines that you could be stepping on. If you don't have someone who knows what they're doing, number one, it could take you a lot longer. I mean, I had a client once who had done it himself, and he came to me later on. And the problem was, because he did it himself, it ended up taking him a long time to get his patent. And remember, your patent life is 20 years from when you file, not from when you issue. So in this case, he lost at least, 7 years of the value of his patent because he did it himself rather than going and getting a patent lawyer to do it for them. There are also ways that you could mess things up, quite honestly, and there's a lot of them in the patent system. So if you're going to go that route, you want to hire them. You want to hire an attorney who will do it for you and who can actually make sure that you get the best result as quickly as possible. Well, that's it for today. I'm not going to belabor this and keep this going forever. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about trademarks, and then we'll be continuing for the rest of the week. I hope this has been informative, and I look forward to continuing to offer value to everybody and to provide a little bit of background about what intellectual property is and how it's relevant to your business. Thanks.